first of all, thank you for taking an hour out of your busy schedule, certainly, and a lot of the uncertainty that's happening around us right now. I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a welcome distraction. I need it.
Very good. Very good. Glad we could provide that for you.
Mm-hmm.
And for the students, let me just introduce Chris Doe to you. I have, and I've told all of you this before, but for several years now, I've been watching Chris, first through his YouTube channel with others, but through his YouTube channel, The Futur, Futur. I'm involved with a group called the Entre Architect Academy, or Entre Architect, and I really see Chris Doe as Entre Architect, and The Futur as Entre Architect on steroids for the broader design community. And so Chris's background, I love your headline on LinkedIn, which says, "I teach people how to make a living doing what they love." And I have no greater goal for these students than to figure out, if architecture is really what they love. I have no greater goal than helping them understand how to really make a living in the business of architecture. And that's one of the big deficiencies, I think, is that business of architecture is not taught as well as it should be. So this is Chris. He is scroll down here. He's the CEO and Chief Strategist and Executive Creative Director at Blind Inc. Out in Santa Monica, California, which is really on the graphic and visual and digital side of design rather than architecture. As we would quote unquote, talk about design in our class. It's different, but I would argue that the business of design that Chris talks about is very, very, very similar to the business of architecture. And as I mentioned before, Chris is the founder and CEO of The Futur, which is a YouTube channel, which is a mastermind group, which is a training platform, is probably something close to what Chris and the crew calls it. So we'll be digging deeper into, beyond the videos that I assigned for you to watch for tonight, we'll be digging deeper into more of the lessons over there at The Futur. So Chris, again, thank you. Really appreciate you being here. And to all the students, get ready to ask your questions, because that's anytime that one of the videos pop up and it's a Q&A, those are some of my favorites.
I want to encourage your class to ask any question that you might have in your mind. And I usually say this, and nobody ever pushes past this boundary, but there are no limits. You can ask me personal, professional, things that people are not prone to speak about in public circles, and even things that are being recorded. I try now, as I'm entering a different phase of my life, to be as transparent as humanly possible. So I say this so that we can push past the surface questions, push past the generic things that are asked 1,000 times to 1,000 different people. If I know it, if I can find it out for you, I will do my best to share it with you.
That's really good advice. Thank you for that. And everybody out there, hear that, please, and act on that. Maybe I can just start out with a question and ask, why did you start The Futur? And I think what leads me to ask that question is, what was the deficiency that you saw that led to you saying, hey, we need to, and it probably didn't start out with, we need to build this big, huge learning platform, but what was the deficiency that you saw that led to the creation of The Futur?
Yes. So Guy Kawasaki does this talk about innovation. He talks about jumping the curve. And that innovations happen not by doing incremental improvements and changes, but actually just jumping the entire curve altogether. How Daisy wheel printers didn't make that jump to dot matrix printers, and dot matrix printers, in terms of the manufacturers, didn't make the jump to laser printers, and then it goes on to inkjet and 3D printing. And if you really think about it, it's all about definitions. If you say we're a company that makes a certain thing, when the market changes and when the needs change, you can't see anything but what it is that you make. But if you focus on we make technology to help people communicate and to realize their ideas in tangible ways, then all of a sudden the doors open. So as a person who runs a company, I always have to be on the lookout for what the next curve is. And so when we are in the space of making commercials and music videos, when nobody pays for music videos anymore, and commercials are going away because nobody watches commercials, we can skip them. We pay for streaming content. So if we're in that business, the curve is coming and it's going to end. It's finite. And there were a lot of people within the company who could not see that. And I had to be the person who's like, I know I'm running the company, guys, but you have to trust me. There's got to be some other thing. I don't know what that thing is just yet, but we have to try other things. And so that's when we started to shift our business model away from working with an agency, because that's usually who hired us, the big Madison Avenue advertising agencies, Leo Burnett, Shy Day, those kinds. And then we started to become an agency ourselves so that we can work with clients who wanted that kind of thinking, production, and sophistication, but didn't need an agency and didn't want to pay for that overhead. So that kind of saved us for a while, and I was happy doing that. And the company was like, whoa, okay, so now we're doing something totally different. But then there's been this burning desire inside of me, because I've been teaching for 15 years, that I wanted to start my own school and do things my own way. But I was still thinking, I think very traditionally, that I could just set up a studio space and invite students to come in, work with me after hours or work on the weekends, and I would train them and then basically replicate the systems that I already knew. But that's when some idea T-bones me on the freeway, which is, why aren't we doing this concept on the internet? Why aren't we leveraging all these new modern platforms and tools that can connect a lot of people essentially for free, and leverage these ideas and start to think about things differently? And that set me on a whole different path. So this is one of those accidental businesses where some interests are aligned, and then you try some things and it's not really a business for a couple of years, and then it becomes a thing that's all consuming. And now we have completely stepped away from doing client service work. It's been almost 2 years now. December 2018, we pledged ourselves to see if we can sustain the same team, the company, the office, the overhead that we have, while not doing client work. It was scary because the numbers did not support it, but we made that commitment, and you burn the bridge behind you, so there's no retreat. It's either you succeed or you die. And with that, we made it work.
Yeah, it's amazing what taking the leap will do for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a group of students that are probably taking their first swing at coming up with a business idea, or at least, starting to dig into that. And you talk to lots and lots of entrepreneurs in everything that you do. What do you think when they're thinking of an idea, when they're testing an idea? Is this the thing? Is this not the thing? Is anybody going to buy this thing? Just like your idea to shift away from client services. What do you think is the most important question that they need to ask themselves as they're working on their ideas?
I think you have to become a really good and objective observer of a problem that needs to be solved. Like, does the world need another logo design company? It's debatable. And so we want to make sure we're not solving a problem that nobody needs or wants, because then we're just going to add to the noise. And there's a lot of really incredible, wonderful tools that you can use to test your idea. I mean, 30 years ago, you'd have to actually bring a product to market or an idea to market to see if it would work. And that's an incredible investment of time, money, and energy. But today, you could say, I have an idea, and if you're not worried about your intellectual property, quote unquote, being stolen, then you would float ideas around and see like what connects. You can create an image, a prototype, a mock-up, something to see if the market wants or needs something like this. So a friend of mine had told me this. He's like, one of my mentors told him this. He said, "You're allowed to complain one time. The first time you can complain. The second time you either do something about it or you just shut up and deal with it." So when you find that you're complaining about a problem over and over again, that's probably a signal to you that this won't go away. And then this is when we find a problem that's worth solving, that maybe other people share the same pain point. And there's lots of ways to test that idea, things that don't cost a lot of money. And then you can go and build some minimum viable version of it and potentially, with all your design skills, launch a Kickstarter campaign. That's a great way to kind of see if there's demand for this thing before you actually have to actually do all the work. And I'm finding that several mature companies are going back to the Kickstarter well because they want to know what the initial order run is. How many, like if you're making a physical product that has different variables, different SKUs, like how many of this size and this color do we need to make? And it takes a lot of the guesswork, so you're not sitting on inventory that nobody wants. So I think testing market viability and getting feedback early and often is critical to having a successful launch of a product.
That's really great advice, and that's one of the things that we've talked about, right? Everybody in the class is not only figuring out who this is for, who's going to pay you for it, but also testing, right? And one of the things that I've offered is to connect you with whoever I can, so that you can ask those questions. Is it the HR director? You know, would you buy this? Would this be valuable to your firm? So make sure you hear that advice from Chris. I'm going to ask Chris one more question, and then I want somebody to speak up with a question after this. But one of the things that I like to do, Chris, is I don't actually read. I listen to books a lot. In a past life, before March, I used to travel a lot. And speak a lot, and so I'd listen to books on planes and as I drove, etc. And one book that I completed recently was "Where Good Ideas Come From." Have you read that?
No.
So when you mentioned Guy Kawasaki and basically the innovation, one of the concepts that's in "Where Good Ideas Come From" is close adjacencies. I forget all the terms now off the top of my head, but when you were describing what Guy was talking about, it's the same thing. It's like most of these sustainable innovations don't make huge leaps, right? You don't go from a scribe writing something on parchment to a laser printer, right? That's right. Not the leap. It's the daisy wheel. It's the dot matrix. It's whatever's next and next and next. So, as students think about a potential business idea, do they need, or where could those ideas come from? Should they be iterating? Hey, I worked at this firm and they did this, and I saw that they needed this, or should they be coming up with some great big pie in the sky kind of idea?
I think both could work. There are caveats and potential pitfalls for either idea, I think. A lot of people, especially young people, like to come up with world-changing ideas. And unfortunately, you need a lot to be working in alignment with your idea for it to work. You probably need a ton of venture capital. You need cooperation from different sectors of industry. And so that's usually where the ideas go to die. Like my cousin, who's a dreamer, he would say, "Oh, I got this really big idea." But then you have to get big manufacturers, then you have to get these hotels and casinos to participate, and then you have to get a consumer base. And what expertise do you bring? Because it's like, are you just the person who came up with a random idea? Like, are you replaceable? I kind of like going a little bit more minimum viable. I know some people hate that idea about minimum viable because it's like the lowest bar that you're going to solve for, but it's just to get something out into the market and react to it. I recommend looking in sectors where people ignore things. Like I remember a while ago listening to the story of OXO, the Good Grips company, and they were thinking like, there's not a lot of ergonomically designed tools in the kitchen. They're like industrially made and used, and we just accept that this is the way they must be. So one of the early innovations was to take a carrot peeler and try to find a grip that you could put on it so that people can, like elderly people, people with arthritis, or children can grab onto these things and use it. And they tested lots of different things, and ultimately they bought a cheap rubber grip for a bicycle, and they smashed it in there, and that became the first iteration of that. And I love that company because their products either work or they don't. They're either cool to leave on the kitchen table or they're not. And so they looked for a problem and a space that most of the people ignored. Same story with Method soap. It's like you don't want to be you don't want to be embarrassed by the things that you leave on the counter. So most people take those products and put them under the cabinet when guests arrive. So they just wanted to find a nice shape. It was a very simple problem to solve. Two advertising guys, I think, solved that problem. So look for a problem or a space that people are ignored and have accepted this must be the way. And so these innovations come from seeing the way things are and the way things should be, and you design for the way things should be. That we're idealists, we're dreamers, and we're the thinkers and creative types. And that's really where I think there's a lot of room.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great examples too. You know, it's sometimes it's just those everyday problems. You know, why has no one? It's back to your example before. You can complain once, right? Why has no one solved this problem before? I'm going to solve that problem. Yeah, great example. All right, who has a question for Chris? Just unmute yourself and ask your question.
I can go. One of the questions that I came up with was, after making your first sale, what strategies, steps we can make to secure the second, the third sale, and just develop a pattern of being profitable.
Alejandra, is your idea a product or is it a service? Because when we talk about sales and getting repeat sales, I just need to know in like the categories that we're speaking, or is it some other thing that I'm not thinking?
It's a service.
Service. Okay, great. I can answer that question. So it's much harder to find a new client than it is to get more work from the same client. So the best way to get increased sales is to do the best job you can for the client. And I talked about this yesterday, and I think the expression goes, do more than what you're paid to do, and eventually you'll be paid more than what you do. So there's just the under promise, over deliver idea. And I think it's very important, especially as you are all very new. You're going to get out into the world, and this is great because you have an abundance of energy and enthusiasm. Hopefully you're still idealistic about what can happen. You're not jaded and cynical like myself. And you go out there and you attack that brief and you bring new ideas, even though the client's going to kill 99 of them. There's still that one. And that's what you bring. And that's what the world needs. It needs people who have a seemingly unlimited supply of enthusiasm. And then you're going to be able to change the world that way. So you do this thing for the client, and the client realizes, my gosh, you've given me way more value than what I paid you for. And that's a great place to begin a relationship. And I think you need to follow up on that. I think you need to, before the job finishes, to say, you know, I hope you enjoyed the process thus far and like what I've been able to make for you. What else do you have coming down the line? And if they say nothing, as you can ask them then, can you think of two people that might need what it is that I do? And if you don't mind just giving me that information, I'll go reach out to them myself. Something that my business coach told me before is take as much work away from your clients who want to help you off their plate. Don't tell them, will you email and do an introduction for me, because they forget. There's more things that they need to do. So you can get a name and a contact information like a telephone or an email. Take that off their plate. Send the email yourself. I was just talking to Bob or Mary and your name came up and they recommended that we get together and talk about X. And that's what I would do. One of the biggest mistakes that I made in 20 plus years of running my service studio is, as much as I'm embarrassed to admit this, is I really never understood the concept of customer service. This is critical to keeping your clients happy, to really empower and fuel this idea of word of mouth advertising. customer service is everything. So for a long time, I operated under this presumption that the best customer service I could give my client is to do an amazing job, to give them more value than what they paid. That's not customer service. That's just called showing up and being a professional, because that's what everybody does. That's the cost of entry. And so it came from a very naive and maybe self-centered, egotistical point of view to say like, no, I gave you superior product and that's my customer service. It's driven mostly because I'm probably antisocial, an introvert, and I just don't like talking to people, generally speaking. I don't like to be around people. So when we had client dinners, I would send my entire team, and I would see the bill later. It's like, I should have eaten here because that was an expensive meal. I don't know what you guys are eating, but this is ridiculous, right? And I needed to get FaceTime with my clients. I needed to think about their lives and how else I can help them. And this all came to like a focal point for me a couple of months ago. I'm not in the office much. We're all kind of under lockdown. So I go in the office, there's a voicemail, and I check it. And it's my realtor. And he left a message. He's like, hey, Chris, this is Rob. I just want to let you know, funny little thing is, this is the 12th anniversary of your house. You know, I like to just call my clients and let them know. It's kind of funny how time flies. I'm just wishing you and the family well. And he named my wife and my kids. And he's like, that's it. If you need anything, you know who to call. So he hangs up. And he does this without fail about this and other things. And there's a reason why he's the #1 real estate broker in our area. And he's done billions, like $1 billion worth of sales in real estate. And it made me realize, just in that weird, like Hitchcockian moment, you know, where the camera dollies in and it zooms out, my world is warping around. I just started to realize, and I felt this weird burning sensation in the back of my neck, which was, I don't think I've ever done anything like that for my clients, ever. So that kind of made me feel really embarrassed. Like, so if I had to rewind the tape and travel back in time and become that 22-year-old who's starting his company, I needed to treat my clients differently. I need to think about them and to tell them this is coming from a genuine place of appreciation, appreciate their business, and that they could choose anybody, but I'm glad they chose us. So I've been horrible at that. And despite that, I still had a successful company.
If I could piggyback on that as well, and I think this isn't a new phenomenon necessarily, but I think it's been named relatively recently, and by relative, maybe 5-10 years. But there are a lot of CXOs or CX people, client experience people. Think about whether they're buying a product, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling a service. Think about the experience that someone has working with you or buying from you. I think that is coming to light as one of the most important things that you can do, and think about repeat clients and repeat customers. If they don't enjoy the experience of buying from you or working with you, hiring you to do this, are they going to come back? Are they going to recommend someone else hire you or buy from you? I don't know that that's the same thing necessarily as customer service, but customer experience as well. Who else has a question for Chris?
I guess I'm going off of that idea. Is there a special formula to how to develop trust with your client?
Yeah, there sure is. Let's talk about trust. So this is one of those moments where Jeff warned you about, where I won't answer the question, but I'll ask you a question. And maybe we can work on this together. So everybody's like, shoot, I'm not going to ask the question next time. Don't worry, it'll be okay. I don't bite. So here's what we're going to do, Kyle. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, okay? And everybody's allowed to participate. Anybody that's in a quiet enough room, if you want to unmute yourself, play along. I want you to think about the relationships in your life, especially one that's kind of transactional, where you give somebody money for a service or product. I want you to just think about that. So can everybody visualize a moment in time, just rewind the tape, probably pre-COVID, like when you're out and about on the show floor, when you need to buy something or you're contemplating between product A or product B and there's a salesperson involved and you have a decision to make, okay? I just want you to think about that for a second. And then I want you to replay that interaction in your mind from the moment in which there was some kind of contact made. First, it could just be eye contact. It could just be acknowledging that you exist and offering to help if you need anything. It could be helping you find something in a store, anything like that. It could be the last time you bought a car. Okay, now, hopefully, whether you trust them or not, we can learn from both, because we can learn from the opposite. If they broke your trust, we would then do the opposite. So let's describe a couple of things. Let's first keep it in the positive column about something that somebody did to increase levels of trust with you. What did they do? What are the traits or things that they exhibited? If you can't fully articulate it, just describe it in a sentence, and I'll do my best to try to translate that into more digestible chunks. So what do people do, Kyle, to earn your trust?
I think
Maybe a sales call? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of open communication is a good key.
Okay. Can you expand on what open communication means? I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Just the willingness to communicate, like at my convenience, I guess.
Okay. Can you tell me how somebody would do something that would communicate the opposite to you? How does somebody say they're closed, or how do they demonstrate they're closed in their communication and they're not willing to talk to you?
Just non-responsive, I guess.
Okay.
Not available.
So they're responsive. Okay. They're giving you their attention, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are good things. What else?
Feel free to help me, anyone.
We're going to give you 3 lifelines. You can phone
right.
a friend right now. Well, you could just pick somebody.
Hey, Davis.
I like that. So Davis like, I'm not your friend after this, but okay. Davis, help us out.
I think one of the things is they show that they know about like the activity or the whatever they're selling. They know about the thing that like I was thinking about buying boots. The guy who sold me on the pair of boots I bought, like he made it very clear quickly that like he wears boots every day. He has been in the boot selling market for a long time, and he knows a lot about boots and what you want to look for in a boot depending on what you're going to use it for. So
okay, this is fascinating.
Being able to
I love
show
the concrete example. Okay,
that
keep going.
It's being able to show that that you actually know and have experience with the like category of activities that are involved in the product that you're selling, I guess is what I'm saying.
Perfect. You know what you just did there, Davis, and that was a good call, Kyle, because you got some really good help on that one. So well done. Okay, so what you're saying is if the salesperson is knowledgeable, is a subject matter expert, that helps to build trust. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I would ask you then, well, how does somebody demonstrate that? Because we're looking for traits or activities that people can do. So you mentioned a couple of things. I'm going to summarize here a little bit. There was maybe a little personal story that he or she communicated to you that demonstrated that experience, and it was aligned with what your expectations were, aligned with your interests. Here's one small problem with this. What if they told you a long story about themselves, but it had nothing to do with what you wanted? Then you'd be like, this is a blowhard. So stop talking, you know? So we have to then maybe add additional condition on this, which is the story was relevant to you. Because if it's an irrelevant story, then what's the point? You're just wasting my time. And you don't have to raise your hand, but if we're in a large group, I'd say everybody raise your hand where you had a salesperson talk about something you cared nothing about and you couldn't wait to escape, right? Of course. And if you think about like dating, because you're all relatively young people, right? There's that person at the bar who keeps talking about themselves, and it's like, oh. So that's not a person that really warms you up and builds trust. So we need to make sure that what we're talking about is relevant to the person who's in front of us. So Davis, if you don't mind, just keep yourself unmuted here. Or, yeah, turn your mic back on. How can one find out what is relevant to you?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's good. That's fair. I like that you said that and not like gave me some BS answer. What we're going to do here, Davis, since you're a new player in the game, you can also phone a friend and you could pick somebody else. And I'll give them the same question.
I mean, wouldn't the salesmen want to ask questions about Davis to get to know him?
Yeah, that would be the way.
Yeah.
You would just ask. You would say, like, what are you interested in? What kind of activity are you going to do in this booth? And even if you don't know, they might offer you some suggestions, because I remember when I was first looking for a house, the house that I bought here, my broker, Robert, had asked me, like, what kind of home are you looking for? And I couldn't even use the right words. And he says, oh, you're looking for a traditional home. I'm like, oh, is that what that is? Okay. You know, and I came from a postmodern house, so I don't have the language. And then they described it, and then now we're like getting alignment, right? So here's one mistake that creative people make. You have the curse of knowledge, meaning you've studied all these things and you have terminology and you talk about in your critiques and using very coded language, but then you meet a client who's doing this for the first time. You're like, describe your ideal home, and they can't use your language, and you get frustrated. And you're, why can't clients just tell me what they want? So we won't go down that road. We'll help develop a vocabulary with them and make it accessible, because communication isn't about the words you use, but finding that common ground with somebody. Okay, so we're going to ask questions. So we already know that if we start the conversation with a prospective client and we ask questions, we're going to find out what matters to them. This is really important. And then the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to confirm with them, here's what I heard you say, is this correct? And you would just go down the list. One of my friends is a psychologist, and she says that our main objective in any kind of interpersonal communication is to acknowledge and understand what the other person is saying. And that's it. So if you're having a relationship and a client is a relationship, you need to acknowledge and understand. So what is it that you want? What are you looking for? What are your needs? Do you have any health issues, or what other boots have worked for you in the past, and how have they held up? And are you considering a different brand or just an upgrade to this one? And what kind of budget do you have? So they ask lots of questions without forcing you to make big decisions. And that's what you're doing, is because the word decide has the word side in it. Side means to kill. And so you're killing off options. So that's why people have a hard time making the decision. So if you say, do you want to buy boot A or boot B? People freak out. I don't know, man. So you just ask little questions and make the decisions really small, reducing risk. And what happens is the person that you're asking these questions to feels really like you're paying attention to them. Like, I mean, that's customer service right there. And you could take this and you could translate this across almost everything about like what vacation you want to go on. What kind of food do you want to eat if it's a new restaurant? What kind of movie or play do you want to watch if you're not familiar? You just ask lots of questions. Now we're going to understand what's relevant to this person. And then we have to mirror or match that with like, what can I do? What aligns with that? And if I'm not a good fit, like if I don't know a lot of good vegan recipes, I'm going to recommend you to somebody else, or just say, I don't know. And there's a lot of power in saying, I don't know. Okay, so that's the next thing we're going to touch on. People who are honest, who are transparent, who say what they're thinking, earn trust. It's the people who are evasive and opaque that you start to like, oh, I'm not getting a good feeling about this. I don't know what you're thinking. Like, what's happening behind these eyes? I don't know. So this is where you have to learn the business side of things, which is to learn how to communicate and connect with another human being. There's a couple other things I'm going to help out, because I realize I'm going to eat up all the time just on one question here, which is you have to be patient. Because when Kyle had mentioned like open communication, willingness, I think willingness is another word for like, you're going to be patient. I don't need to close the sale right now. Take as much time as you need, Kyle. Do you need to comparison shop? Do you need to like look at other things? Do you want to try this on? Let me know when you're comfortable. These things build trust. Okay, so every time that you have one of these kinds of questions, I want you to do a little empathy exercise, which is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. What have I ever experienced that was either positive or negative, and what can I peel away from that? And then you could become a student of life.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome, Kyle.
Who else has a question?
I have a question. but my question regards more of building your personal brand. Something that's very common nowadays is like people growing a platform via social media and whatnot to sell their brand. I know you kind of have experience, well, kind of. So you have experience in this like realm of growing your personal brand. If you were to start today, like zero, how would you stand out to everybody?
All right. That was like a curve one. That was like a rope-a-dope. I thought you could hit me with a left and you hooked me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's like, you know this thing over here? Sucker. Okay. I get it. Okay. What would I do if I had to start over today with zero, right? So there's an idea that you said here, which I need to kind of just modify slightly, okay? Which is that you say people create content and their own personal brand to sell something. Ultimately, that's the goal, but that cannot be the thing that drives you to do this thing. There's a great book. It's called Permission Marketing. It's written by Seth Godin. And in Seth Godin's idea, it's like the old way of like interruptive marketing is advertising, radio, and print. It yells at you. It doesn't care what you want, and it wins only through repetition and attrition. So at some point, you're like, okay, I give in. You followed me around enough on Facebook that I will try and click on this link now. Stop it. And that's one way to win, but not a great way. And the other way is called permission marketing, which is it's asking for permission from the other person to volunteer to enroll in a long-term marketing plan. And it's really weird. And you could sit there and say, like, why would anybody do that? All you have to do is look at your inbox and look at everywhere you've clicked on something and you've accepted terms. You have volunteered to do that. And if the person respects your time and attention and doesn't hit you with too many email blasts and gives you things that you think are valuable, usually like, hey, did you know this thing that you were looking at is now 50% off? Right? And we just want to let you know this size is running low in quantity. And you're like, oh, okay, that's okay. But if they're bombing your inbox 4 times a day with garbage, eventually you just unsubscribe. So what Seth talks about is creating a curriculum where each level you move up is moving up the permission ladder. And he says the very top of the permission ladder is when you agree that the vendor can spend your money for you. Right? And this is crazy. Like, you think, does that ever happen? It does happen quite a bit. For example, there's some services that you sign up for where if it's a good deal, maybe they're an agent and they buy on your behalf. That's a level of trust that you want to get to. Like, I'm spacing on the good examples right now. Maybe it'll come to me later. Okay? So in order to be able to do this, you have to think of your social media feed and all the content that you create as part of a long-term curriculum. I want to teach you something. And the deeper we go, the more I will teach you. So at the top of the funnel awareness, got a marketing term here, is just to get people to self-select. I'm for what Fabian does or I'm not for it. And that's totally okay. Because we have to make a decision. We cannot be for all people. So if you work in a style of architecture, then that means that everybody that's not interested in that style of architecture is not going to follow you. And that's totally okay. And this kind of focus is actually good. And so at some point, they're going to become really curious and they're going to click on your bio. And then they're going to go to a page. And on that page, you should take them one level up the permission ladder. You might write an article on, let's say, because I mentioned before, like postmodern architecture. Maybe how to hire your first architect if you're considering postmodern architecture. Or if you're interested in container architecture, which is kind of popular, it's its own little niche, right? You could say, here are some costs and plans or research that I've done and things you need to look out for. And if you would like this, I would love to get your email so that I can send you more updates on this. And so each time you do that, they're moving up the permission ladder up into a point in which they're going to naturally say, you know, Fabian, I've learned a lot from you. By the way, do you have plans that you sell for container architecture? And you're like, of course, we have 4 different things and we could do that. And so what we have learned, especially the way Seth talks about this, is in permission marketing, you don't ask for the sale at the beginning. The first part is just, hey, hi, how are you? This is what I kind of do. You go to another level. It's like a little bit more education, a little bit more information. And would you like to try a sample? Right? And he tells this story about like in the old days when there was like a general goods store, the shop owner would know you by name and your preferences. So when they know you like a certain kind of oatmeal, when this brand has something new to offer, when you come in, they might say to you, hey, Fabian, there's a like a candy bar, an oatmeal bar that you might want to try from the same thing because I noticed you like that. And then in this way, would you like to try a sample? We've lost a lot of that high touch personal interaction that we can actually recreate very effectively in the digital space. So stop thinking about selling, start thinking about educating, start thinking about the long game, because it is a long game and you're going to build up people this way. All right. Now we know this, people who just promote all the time, generally speaking, they don't have a lot of follows. It's very self-centered and the engagement is really low. All right. So think about what's in it for the other person to continue to follow you on a regular basis. Reward them for following you.
Awesome.
If I could piggyback on that one as well, and this is a little more analog example, but it relates specifically to probably every firm that any of you have worked for. There's this common idea amongst architects that sort of the holy grail is when they become known as the trusted advisor, right? I'm the trusted advisor of my client. And Chris, even though you're not an architect, I know you are completely familiar with the idea of the RFP pursuit, right? There are a lot of architects, architecture firms, engineering firms that are competing in the RFP or RFQ arena. So request for proposal, request for qualification. And the mistake that a lot of firms make is that they say, hey, once we get this project, right, they made the short list, maybe they won the pitch somehow and they got the project, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on this project and we're going to become the trusted advisor for this client. And my assertion is that they completely missed the boat. Just like what Chris is saying, they needed to be producing the information, becoming the subject matter experts, making the videos, the blog posts, whatever the medium is, and become the trusted advisor out here before the RFP hits the street. Because if you're the trusted advisor going into the RFP process, you win, right? If you're trying to become the trusted advisor after the contract is signed, it's already too late. It's transactional. You're just a provider, a vendor to them at that point. So I love the Seth Godin example. Great book. If you are, if you use that example of that agency that's at the top that's spending your money for you, trusted advisor is maybe not necessarily spending the money, but they're recommending how you spend the money, and they may actually be writing the RFP, right? So I think it's really important to understand what Chris is talking about there, and understand the wisdom from the Seth Godin book.
It took me a minute. I remember the example, just so I don't leave you high and dry without a good example. Some of you guys participate in these programs like food delivery or clothing delivery. So you've already given them permission to spend your money on your behalf, and that's some pretty high levels of trust. So if you have these kind of meal prep delivery programs, you say, well, I kind of like these things. Will you assemble meals based on my diet needs and my taste level, my budget, and the size of my family? And they send you these things. You've already prepaid for these things. And that's at the very highest level. I'd love to share a really quick story for you because although I'm not an architect, I have hired architects and I've had architects as clients. And so there's a multi-billion-dollar commercial real estate development company out here. And they sent an RFP to us. And they found out about us through a friend of a friend. And we have this policy. We don't pitch. We don't do free work. We're not speculative. And it's something that you talked about, Jeff. And so we responded with, we can send you a capabilities deck, but we're not going to do anything other than that. We're not going to tell you what the design is, because how can we? And they hem and hawed it a little bit, but we stood our ground. And I think everybody else sent them ideas except for us. But they agreed to take a meeting. And I said, I would do that, but I'm not pitching any ideas. You need to understand that. They're like, okay. So we go in and there's a whole boardroom full of people who are decision makers, people who are going to influence who they wind up hiring. And I said, look, there's a real reason why we don't pitch ideas, because the only way we know how to do what we do is we need to spend time with you, understand your needs, and more importantly, what the needs of your prospective clients and customers are. We could guess from afar, and that would be like throwing spaghetti in a wall and seeing what sticks. We don't like to play that way. We're much more precise. And then they asked me some other questions, and I explained previous projects, which I'm happy to do. And I can see something, and it's not always that this happens, but the people in the room were literally leaning forward. This is how I knew this was our job to lose at this point, because when they lean forward, you kind of are using the power of storytelling, your communication, your presentation skills to pull them into your world. And as soon as we were done, the marketing director walked over with me. She's like, Chris, we have a good feeling about this. I'm like, okay, we got the job 2 days later. And that's how we win jobs, without pitching. You stand your ground, you lean on your expertise, and you really highlight what makes you different and why you can't do that work without doing the work.
That's a great example. And I know you're a big fan or what's the word that I want? You're a supporter of the Win Without Pitching manifesto.
Absolutely.
Blair Enns. That by the way, yeah, when I put on the management consultant hat and work with firms, I require their leadership team to read Win Without Pitching manifesto before we start working. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's got a question?
So those are strong words. Being spiteful of something, that's a really strong emotion. And I want to unpack that with you. Like, what's happened for you to fall out of love? And this is like not even falling out of love and becoming tepid about it. It's like, no, I hate you now. What has happened? I see. So it's a little bit more specific about, if I understand this correctly, you don't want to work for this company anymore because they just sucked your soul out of it, right? Okay. So now we get to the truth. I thought it was like an area of study or something like that, like you don't like math anymore. Okay. I think sometimes our gut is a good indicator as to what we need to do, and sometimes we're not smart enough to listen to it. So if you're feeling like underappreciated, if you're feeling abused, if you're feeling not creatively challenged or fulfilled, I think it's time to move on. I really do. And the bigger the company, the less likely it is for them to change for you. The smaller the company, there's potential, especially if they see you as a superstar, and you can have a conversation. And if you feel like it, I'm not sure it's worth it in this moment. Usually you would have this conversation before you get to the hate level, which is like when you're not feeling good about something, I want you to just practice saying what you think. A lot of creative types won't say what they think because we're conflict averse. We don't want to get into a fight. The tension kills us more than anything else, so we just avoid it. And I've done this myself, so I know this firsthand. I'm not telling you I am any better or different than you. But I've learned over time that there's language that you can use that's non-threatening, non-violent, and non-judging. We're not assigning value or blame to anything. We're just trying to say things as an observation. Okay? And if you have a lot of self-awareness, this will help. So what I would do is to talk to whoever it is that's your immediate supervisor, the next person up on the ladder. Do not overstep them because that creates all kinds of problems, okay? That's just bad office, what is that called? Decorum. You don't want to do that. Now, what you'll do is say, hey boss, can I talk to you? Like, I just need 15 minutes of your time because I have to get something off my chest. Cool. 15 minutes, you sit in a room, and it's like, here's the thing. I love this company, or I thought I loved this company. I really want to continue working here, but lately I feel marginalized, or I'm put on projects that I just I'm not really that interested in. I thought you hired me based on this portfolio, and I want to remain engaged and give you the best of what I have, but I just don't see it happening. I don't necessarily expect you guys to change your ways, but is there room here where maybe we can realign so that I can give you my best? And if they blow you off or whatever, and you're not getting a good vibe from that, then I suggest you start planning the escape right then and there. You gave them your best, right? And if they're like, I'm glad you brought this up to me. I didn't realize this is how you felt because you showed there was a twinkle in your eye when we brought up Project A, And now you've got pigeonholed into project A, and I could see now why you feel like your life is being sucked away from you. Why don't we do this? Let's wrap up this project. I'll look for a super cool, fun, exciting thing for you to do, and we can work on this together. So you could do that, but I think you may be already beyond that point. So I'm going to encourage you next time, don't let it get to a boiling point whenever possible. Let off some of the steam so it never gets to that kind of temperature. Now, if you're in that point in which the feeling, the gut is telling you, like, we got to get out of here, this is not a good place, I think you need to act on that sooner than later. I'm always impressed by people who work for me who then say, boss, I'm going to quit. I'm leaving. And they usually give me some very benign reason. I know the reason. You got a better opportunity. You got paid more. There's something more exciting for you. And so as soon as like, boss, I'm leaving, I'm like, you know what? Thank you for your service. I know this is hard for you to tell me. I'm going to make it really easy for you. Let's just figure out what you need so we can get you on your way, because I just appreciate you have the courage to quit. Most people just drag their heels out and they try to get fired. And it's a drain on everybody. It taints the relationship. I would love for you to hold your head high, exit on the best of possible terms, and that way they're none the wiser. And when better, bigger opportunities come, they might recommend you or rehire you for more money. This typically happens if you leave on good terms. So I would just start to begin at this point, looking at the exit scenario, put in your notice, finish up all the loose ends, transfer everything that you need, back up everything for them, and just be as professional as possible. I recommend that you start looking for work before you do all of this stuff, because then you're going to be caught in this gap. And especially with today's economy and the uncertainty of COVID and everything else, it's probably going to create more anxiety and stress for you. Okay? You're welcome.
All right. Well, we've made it to the top of the hour, and I want to be really respectful of Chris and his time. So, Chris, thank you very much for spending this hour with us, and thanks for sharing your wisdom and all the experiences and examples that you have. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate everything you're doing over there at the Future.
Thank you very much. And I nothing gives me more pleasure than helping fellow teachers and educators, and especially you guys. I wish you guys the best of luck. I know the field of architecture can be very, very challenging. Sometimes I find out how much money you guys make, and it's like, oh, this is a life of pain. But maybe you guys will figure it out. You'll be a star architect someday, and I wish that is for you in your future.
Great. Thanks a million, Chris. Really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. You too. Bye. Group, who has a takeaway from tonight?
Well, I really thought that it was interesting when he said during the special formula, where this is what I heard you say, is this correct? Because you're like trying to get them to communicate with you and understanding what they're really saying. Because you could ask them a question and they ask a question and you try to answer it, but then it's nothing like what they had wanted.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Think about the last conflict you had, argument, whatever, and ask yourself, did it really boil down to a misunderstanding, right? We just didn't understand, without even placing blame. We just didn't understand where we were coming from, our individual points or what we were saying. And so the flip side of that, getting to that understanding, especially for your client or your customers, is vitally important. Good example. Who else has a takeaway?
I do, if nobody else is going to go. I liked what he said about ask questions that don't kill off or like force them into a decision, just trying to find out about them without pigeonholing them into something that maybe they don't necessarily want in the end. Yeah,
that was good. It's almost like taking baby steps, right? Asking. I love how he broke down the word decide. Side, the root side means kill. I don't know that that's ever in my conscious mind when I hear that, but what a great example. Baby steps to the point of making a decision. Good one. Who else has a big takeaway?
I do. It's kind of like his last point of winning clients and like leaning on your expertise, and that's how you're gonna keep winning your clients.
Yeah, that's a good example. I also liked, his answer to your question about getting more work from the same clients, right? Combine that with the trusted advisor, right? And now all of a sudden you've got a much more profitable, you've got a much more efficient organization.